On behalf of Father Andrew Sherman and St. Gregory's Episcopal Church, I welcome all of you. I'm Rabbi David Steinhardt. Father Sherman and I are the co-presidents of Boca Raton Interfaith Clergy Association, and we've been doing this work together for a long time. We believe it's very important work for a number of reasons, some of which are quite obvious. In March, the Boca Raton Interfaith Clergy Association hosted a program on immigration. And it was an informational program so that people could learn both about the meaning of immigration to the United States of America and the history of immigration here. We spoke about it from a number of different perspectives, and it was a meaningful program, so we all felt. But as we left that evening, there was also a sense that some of us had, that is, there's a real issue. We have a crisis in immigration, and there's a problem with detainees. There's a human problem that needs our attention. I think many of us share the sense that there are some very challenging issues in our nation today, very challenging issues. And we share this sense also that we feel as individuals often pretty helpless, like, what can I do? And so that was the question that we began to ask ourselves after that program, because we think we have a responsibility as clergy, men and women in our congregations, to help provide that answer when we go back to our churches and synagogues and mosques. And so then we decided that we would get in touch with Renata, who's here. Renata Bezzetta, where are you, Renata? Renata wears many, many different hats, as she likes to say, including one from the League of Women Voters, which brought her to the program in March. And we contacted Renata together with Michelle, who coordinated this program this evening, Michelle Shearer, who's in the back of the room. And we said what we would like to do is see if there's a way to offer possibilities for people to do something. And some of the things may not be major effort, but they might be something, because there are human beings who are really crying for help. And we have the possibility of helping during this crisis. So Renata got in touch with a number of the different agencies and organizations that she has been working with. And they're all here, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about them and about the work, and you're going to hear what you can do. And some of these projects are simple, and some are more challenging, but that's why we're here tonight. Renata.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. You probably are asking why the League of Women Voters is involved in this. So the League of Women Voters is a non-profit, non-partisan organization that for almost 100 years is defending our democracy. And we do so by taking serious positions on issues after we research, and if we believe that they can cause harm to our democratic system. And one is immigration. We have an immigration committee here at the League of Women Voters of Palm Beach County that's fully dedicated to three things: advocacy, community education, and community service. Here today, we're talking about community service, and I thank Brika and Rabbi Steinhardt for organizing this one-of-a-kind event in our community, focused solely on how we can help. We will not be talking today about policy. We're not going to be talking about how the system is broken, because we all know it, right? We know families continue being separated at the border. We know families continue being separated within our state through the work of ICE. We know that detention has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that people have we have all sorts of human rights violations within immigration detention centers. We also know that people are being called to represent themselves in court. Many of those are children Just in Miami-Dade, we have about 2,000 children who are set to appear in court without legal counsel. And if you think that this is bad, it gets worse when you know that the court system at times doesn't even provide an appropriate interpreter. That the interpreters at times are calling into court, and these people are trying to figure out a very complex immigrants are trying to figure out a very complex legal system on their own without understanding a thing, and after having only a few minutes to figure it out, because the immigration dockets are also incredibly huge, and judges have to produce, and they have very little time to do so. So we all know what the problems are. We don't need to talk about them anymore, but we do need to figure out how to act. And the organizations that are here today, and I invite their representatives to come to the front. You can, Christine, Wendy, if you can come, Jill, to the front. All those organizations that are here today are already doing an outstanding work in our community. So the one thing that I can tell you is, just like me, most of us are volunteers. We also have families, we have another job, we also have a busy schedule. So we understand how hard it is to act. But we share one thing, is the understanding that we cannot remain silent, and we cannot remain on the sidelines, waiting for immigration reform, doing nothing in face of so much human suffering. So when this event came about, and we had the opportunity to invite organizations, we knew who are doing great work in our community. So we do have one expectation tonight, is that after you hear about the wonderful work that they are doing, I hope that you feel in your heart at least one action. There are, as Rabbi Steinhardt mentioned, there are small and big actions. Some things you can do in an hour at home, some others you're gonna have a more set schedule. If you decide to defend immigrants in court, it's more complex. But I hope that you feel inclined to do at least one thing before you leave tonight. So how are we gonna work this event? All of them, they were gonna have a very short time to introduce their work. They were gonna explain what they do and what they need help with. And after that, the organization representatives were gonna move back to the tables, and we invite you to meet them one-on-one so you can ask questions, and you can see if there are particular activities that would fit your schedule and capacities in best way to serve. Then we will try, we're gonna give this time so everybody can freely move around the room, but we might give you some time frame, because we tend to stop at one table and ask wonderful questions about why this and why that. So we want to have you time to move around. Rotate. Thank you, Christine. So we're going to follow, let's follow the handout introduction. And before we start, just one comment. We're supposed to have the FIU Legal Clinic here today. They need help with attorneys to lead in 3 lawsuits that they have at this time. And they also have 2 different programs. One is to train attorneys to represent immigrants, and the other one is to capacitate people like me who have no legal background to accompany immigrants to court. So this is, I will be at their table, and I can explain with more details when you come to visit. And if you are interested in that legal work, you can provide your information, and I'm going to pass to FIU. Unfortunately, Dr. Juan Gomez could not come tonight. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? My name is Christine Ho, and I am the creator and leader of a group called Friends of Broward Detainees. What we do is we provide humanitarian support for unauthorized immigrants and asylum seekers locked up in Broward Transitional Center, which is, which I call an immigrant prison because that's what it is. I prefer not to sugarcoat it by calling it a detention center, because in reality it is a prison where immigrants are locked up. And so we provide humanitarian support. There are several of my volunteers in here, including Renata. The kind of support we provide is to face-to-face visits. Sometimes people locked up haven't seen anyone from the outside for 6 months or more, or talk to them. So we provide face-to-face visits. We also try to help them stay in touch with their families. And one of the ways we do that is by depositing money in their accounts so they can call their families. Because without money in their accounts, it's not possible for them to call anyone, either their families or their lawyers, if they're lucky enough to have one. So another thing we do is try to find sponsors for the ones lucky enough to be offered release from being locked up. They cannot be released unless they have a sponsor. And the sponsor has to be either a U.S. citizen or a green card holder with an income above a certain figure. So the most challenging thing that we do is finding pro bono attorneys, because the greatest need of these people locked up is legal representation. And statistics show that 86% have no legal representation. What that means is that they go to court representing themselves in front of a judge who is going to judge them, judge the evidence that they present, whether or not it supports, convinces the judge that they're being persecuted and receive death threats and so on. But in the courtroom, there is a lawyer in the courtroom, but it's a prosecutor paid for by the government, whose job it is to make it as difficult as possible for them to be granted asylum. So they have no lawyer to defend them. They have to defend themselves. But there is a lawyer in the room trying to undermine whatever they do to defend themselves. So we deposit money in their accounts. We visit them. We sometimes we try to find sometimes, yes, and so we're looking for attorneys who might be willing to contribute some of their time to defending someone in the courtroom. Clothes, also, we provide clothes also for those who are being deported. And generally, you know, other kinds of support. Anything else, my helpers? Okay, one of those in the back of the room is a sponsorship expert. So if you're interested in being a sponsor, please speak with her. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you for coming.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me here. My name is Wendy King. I'm with Friends of Miami-Dade Detainees. Similar to Friends of Broward Detainees, we visit people in immigrant detention in Miami at Chrome Immigrant Prison. So we are able to visit 7 days a week. We provide phone time, access to legal help. We help find sponsors, people can be released. We are also at the Miramar ICE office every Wednesday morning. Every Wednesday, on every day of the week, families are forced to line up in really long lines under the heat, under the sun, under the rain as well, to wait to check in to see if they're going to be deported or have their appointment rescheduled. So we're out there every Wednesday offering snacks, drinks, and just helping them in whatever way we can. We also have a women's empowerment group for undocumented women, just to discuss kind of the intersections of being undocumented and domestic violence, trafficking, different housing issues. So our needs, I would say, are visitors. We can never have enough visitors to visit everybody that is requesting it. And for a lot of people at Chrome, it's the only visit they will get their entire time detained. And of course, donations to help pay for all the things we provide, the phone time, the snacks, everything like that. Thank you.
My name is Jill Hansen, and I'm with the Palm Beach County Coalition for Immigrant Rights, as well as the Florida Immigrant Coalition, and the Palm Beach County Coalition for Immigrant Rights was founded over 10 years ago. Basically, it is a coalition organization where different groups working on immigration issues come together monthly. We talk about what each group is doing, and people come with new ideas, and we try to help them to enact those ideas. We work with, recently, we worked with the school district to get them to pass what we call a welcoming schools resolution, and that was back in the beginning days when there were rumors and raids that were going on in different communities, and on one day there were about 2/3 of the Hispanic children did not show up for school because their parents were afraid that if they took their kids to school they would be taken away and detained. So the superintendent at that time was very concerned about that, and so we came to him with this proposal to have a welcoming schools resolution, and it's not just a resolution, but it also has actual practical things that the school district is carrying out, and we participate in meetings with school district personnel to ensure that, for example, education is appropriate. For example, the school district's rules regarding protection of children are being carried out, and that the personnel know about that, and so on. And we also have worked with the city of Delray Beach, which recently passed a Welcoming Cities resolution, and we're working with other different groups to try to get other cities to pass Welcoming Cities resolutions, especially important in these times when there is so much anti-immigrant sentiment. I want to just, we have a table back there, and you can talk to Bob Hudson, who is our chairperson, and get literature and find out what we do and get invited to our monthly meetings. But I want to just give a shout out to the Friends of Miami-Dade detainees and the Friends of Broward detainees. In these times, it is so important to show up to witness what's going on. If I actually have had the very sad experience of going to Miramar with a very close friend numerous times over the past several years. And if you want to see what our immigration system looks like, go to that Miramar Center. My very first impression was, oh, this must be what it was like in Germany 75 years ago. Because the people are, as she described, the people are lined up in the sun, the 90-degree sun. This group of Friends of Miami-Dade detainees came and tried to start having some juice for them, some water, look after the children and so on. And each step that they took to try to protect these poor people, and they're, you know, you look at them and you know that there's just a bunch of hardworking people that came here to make a better life for themselves and their families, and now they're being dragged down to the depths of despair. And every step that they take to try to give them some protection, the immigration officials push them back in a very cruel way. So it's, the more people see that and the more people speak out about that, and I've seen the effect of the Friends of Miami-Dade detainees, the more we can push back against what's going on. One example is, you probably, maybe most of you know about Homestead, where there at one time were thousands of children housed there under deplorable conditions, and then first just ordinary people went there and demonstrated and complained and went to the media, and then politicians started going there and complaining and going to the media, and guess what, now? No children being detained there. Whereas we were told, oh, that's the only place they can keep them. Now they don't have any children there, and they have to move them on either to be with their families or to be in much nicer, friendlier places. So, and then I think Rosa Maria is going to talk about an opportunity right close by here. We have a center where immigrants have to report right here in Palm Beach County. And maybe she's going to tell you a little bit about that. But again, to show up, just to witness it, and just to show the people there. I know that the woman that I go with, she told me the first time that we saw the Friends of Miami-Dade detainees, how touched she was that there were people that supported her, because so many of them feel like they're just hated. And to see that there were people there that supported her and supported people like her was extremely moving to her. So.
I work mostly with the church, and I always introduce myself to the people that I encounter as working for the church, and I find that they open up. Through Jill and Bob, I found out, and I went to a conference, a workshop on immigration that Florida Immigrant Coalition held in Broward County, and I heard about the Miramar experience. And I didn't know that there was a place close to me until Jill and Bob mentioned it. So on my own, I went. It's about 10 minutes from my house. I didn't even know where it was. I just knew that there was an IHOP, that it was near Atlantic and military, and I went searching for it. I didn't know what to find. And so I asked a lady it's a bunch of buildings, and the first wing of those buildings, they're office buildings and medical and so on and so forth. I said, where is the immigration office here? And a lady came out, and I believe that that's the one. So I went number 16, and I saw that it was not ICE, it was GO. And I understand that that's connected with a company that has detention centers, prisons. And so I noticed that there were people all around in the parking lot waiting, and there was a whole bunch of people parked in their cars facing Atlantic, and I decided to approach. I made 5 reports 5 different times and sent them to various pastors and bishops, and heard nothing from it. But anyway, I thought, I found such terrible situations. In fact, one day I went in and barged in and sat down, and I was summarily asked to leave. But I didn't get to talk to the people. Some of them come from as far as Martin County, from Stewart, and they have to pay terrible sums, and a whole industry of ferrying people from those different areas has grown out of that. I was glad to hear that Jill was there, and she works a lot with an immigration center called El Sol, and it seems that they have assistance from the people around, for the people around Jupiter to get there. They all have to wear ankle bracelets. I didn't notice that in the beginning because I would never think of looking down, but then I said, what is that? And each time, each time I noticed that. Well, in one of those visits, I run into a woman called Carolina. Carolina took my number down, and we have become friends. We communicate, and so when there is a legal clinic, I inform Carolina, and she has gone there, but she needs a job, and she hasn't gotten a job. But this is the kind of thing that can create a whole process of service and ministry and so on that's ripe for the taking if we but encourage people who want to do that. You have to have a companion who speaks Spanish, because they're all from Guatemala. There are a couple that I met from Honduras, but mostly from Guatemala. And that's why I made contact with a very important man in immigration, Father Frank O'Loughlin. I tried to get him here. But anyway, he has managed to create a transport system from his center to take the people there, because it's still very costly. One woman had to pay $200 from Palm City all the way to, and she was the only one that person was taking, so he had to pay for her driving, and in the same way. So I was very shocked that these people, were undergoing those difficulties. And that's because, how do you get here? I said, how did you come here? So anyway, that's the result of my report, and I'm anxious to share it with you. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're just going to review it. The tables and what they do, so you can go and visit them. First, as a comparison, although they are uncomparable, Friends of Broward Detainees does the visitations here next to us in Pompano Beach at the Broward Transitional Center. But those visitations are only on the weekends. So if you can volunteer on the weekends, that's a good place to go. If you want to help with the, I'm glad that you're there. I am sorry. Okay, so if you want to help with the visitations in Miami-Dade, those are throughout the week, but it's farther from us. So before I finish my review, I apologize, Sol. It's because I had to go back there and say, Sol, come.
Good evening. My name is Sol Couto, and I'm with Legal Aid Society. I'm here representing the Community ID of the Palm Beaches ID program. It is a program that was launched this year in March, where the Community ID of the Palm Beaches is creating and distributing identification cards to anyone within Palm Beach County who has limited access or for whatever reason is unable to obtain a government-issued ID. It is also available to any one of us whom would like to have one, as long as we meet the program requirements. There are program requirements. So we are looking for volunteers. The program is run through the generosity of volunteers, and there are opportunities once a month on Saturdays, or we're holding smaller events. There is some work at the office that volunteers can help us with in addition to the actual events. Through the program, we want to build community involvement by connecting the ID participants with other community services and programs. So we are inviting to our events other nonprofits, agencies, organizations, so that they can have that opportunity to address and provide literature, flyers, information to the participants, our participants, while they're there waiting to be processed. So we are also looking for organizations whom I perhaps have not reached out to, where we can work together to serve our community. We appreciate and would benefit greatly from being allowed to use space at organizations where we can hold smaller drives as well, in addition to the larger drives.
Just a little bit about the function of the IDs and how that's beneficial to the immigrants.
Yes, there are many impacts of the Community ID card program on individuals, families, and the community at large. I can give you some examples of what we've been, and I have been personally told by the participants. So many of our participants are in the workforce, and some of them need an identification card, not necessarily a government-issued identification card, but an identification card to be able to gain access to gated communities, condominiums, and the fact that they don't have a government-issued ID and only have a passport which sometimes is not quite accepted in these communities. They're not able to get into these communities or condominiums to work. The part-time residents need or ask for an ID to be able to show that they are members of this community because their driver's license, for example, is from their home state. We have students who have been able to obtain library cards with the community ID. I have had many elderly who have come to me to say, I, for whatever reason, am unable to or don't have a government-issued ID at this time, and I need to get my medication. I need to be able to present a form of ID to my provider. I have had folks who've lost major documents in a fire or through theft, and they have come to me looking for a way to be able to have access to certain services. Now, I should mention that the cities of West Palm, Belle Glade, and Lake Worth have signed resolutions whereby they are accepting and recognizing the community ID of the Palm Beaches as an verifiable form of ID. So our card is a verifiable form of ID. So for example, if you were to live in Lake Worth and you were to need to open a utilities account, you could use the community ID identification card as your form of identification to present to be able to get that water or other utility account set up. Okay, and families, I've had 2 opportunities to be hosted by the C.L. Brownback Clinic, where I have served their patients, and they've mostly been families, mother, father, whom have come to me needing an identification card, again, for access to medical services. I had one business owner whom shared her story with me, and I thought it was very moving, and I'll share it with you. She is a business owner, she and her husband, and they were paying an exorbitant amount of money to be able to gain access to certain communities where they had jobs. Without them both having an ID, they were paying a person with an ID money to be able to gain access. And when they heard about the ID, they came running to us. They took them 2 times to be able to gain entry to the event, but on the second time, they were able to secure an ID, and with that community ID, they were able to now get into these communities where they have these jobs and no longer have to pay someone else to get them in. So, I mean, there's many stories, and there are some program requirements, and there's quite a list of them, and you're able to talk to me further at the back, and I can explain to you what those program requirements are. Thank you for your time.
Okay. What is very important to mention about the ID is that at this particular time, hate and fear is the thing affecting immigrants in our community the most. In Palm Beach County, we have 26% of our residents are immigrants. The vast majority are here for more than 10 years. They have family, they are law-abiding residents of our community, and they work. What happens when they cannot have an identification card, it might be the deal breaker between somebody calling ICE to arrest somebody who is, as I said, a law-abiding person, just because that person cannot present an identification card. So the identification is a preventive step in many cases to this detention pipeline. So just to finish the review, and I apologize again for Saul, for the Legal Aid Society of Palm Beaches. If you want to help organizing events like this and educating our community, you can go to the Immigration Committee at the League of Women Voters. If you want to help with the Community ID, the Legal Aid Societies, with Palm Beach County Coalition for Immigrant Rights,